First and Now, the official BC Lions podcast, is originating inside the Go-Goat Sports Studios at the Wall Center on Burrard Street. Matt Baker, Nick Kowalski, and we're moving forward. It has been an interesting, not necessarily in a great way, last couple of days in the Lions' den. Certainly was concerning at the time. Nathan Rourke went down early in the fourth quarter on Friday night, but we've spoken to Nathan. You've heard from Nathan speaking after practice on Monday, in good spirits, and the whole team is in good spirits, Nick. No other way to start this podcast than to talk about the news of the week, but guys are moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, goes without saying, but super unfortunate what happened to Nathan. You're kind of hoping for the best on that plane ride back to Vancouver after that win, but unfortunately it was maybe one of the more worst case scenarios that came about with his foot. But I mean, Nathan's looking out for his long-term health, and the team understands that too, and it's why he's getting surgery this week. But I mean, yeah, like they talked about this in February. When I say they, I mean Rick Campbell and Neil McAvoy, but they brought in Michael O'Connor because they felt that he could be the guy too if necessary, and now's the time for him to be that guy. As Michael's been saying, he's not gonna try to be Nathan Rourke in that offense. He's gonna try to be Michael O'Connor. And I mean, based off what we've seen in this short period of time, whether it's preseason, whether it's even today in practice, if we want to get into that, I mean, he looks like he's just going to fill in just nicely.
Yeah, we kind of jetted out right after practice to get down here to the studio, but we both kind of took note of how in command he looked. And it's practice, right? It's non-padded. It's not necessarily, you take it for what it is because quarterbacks can't get hit in practice, all that. But the Skelly, he looked fantastic.
Yes.
Throws a nice ball. He was hitting all of his receivers, and that's been the best trait of this offense is Nathan Rourke, pre-injury, used everyone. I mean, we've seen games where we've had 4 or 5 different receivers record at least 5 or 6 catches. His ability to share it, to spread it around, and with the injuries they've had to the likes of Brian Burnham, most notably on offense, and this is an offense that's on pace to hit some pretty interesting heights. We'll get into that. But, yeah, tracing it back to the free agency period where Michael O'Reilly had moved on and Nathan Rourke was declared the guy right away. I was a little surprised at that, but now we know why they did that. Michael O'Connor comes in on free agency, and to the outsiders, to the media, and it's natural, 2 Canadians, this is great, but you said it. Michael O'Connor is a guy who's been a Vanier Cup MVP with UBC in 2015, and Blake Nill, the head coach of the T-Birds, told me this. They attempted to recruit Michael. They weren't expecting to get him. What they were trying to do was they were trying to send a message to people, to other possible recruits. This is the type of players we're going after. And lo and behold, he ends up coming. And what he accomplished at UBC was, we just talked about it there, took that program to new heights in 1 year. So this is a kid who's been itching to get his chance. It'll be his first official start. He received some spot duty toward the end of 2019 with the Toronto Argonauts. Didn't receive any playing time in Calgary last year. And that, to me, tells me this kid is hungry.
Exactly, too. And I think for those who aren't really fully aware of who Michael O'Connor is, he's a tall guy, more of a standard kind of pocket passer kind of quarterback. Like he'll stick in the pocket and find his reads. And something I've observed with him is he's really good on the rollout. We saw it in the preseason a couple of times where he hit Josh Pedersen on a deep touchdown. And which something that goes with that thought about him being a strong thrower on the run is that he's not afraid to go deep. And we saw it today in practice. He's not afraid to air it out. So for those who are maybe thinking that, there's no more Nathan Rourke, this BC Lions passing attack's going to take a major hit. I mean, Michael O'Connor is not afraid to make any throw in the field. And even there's been the narrative too that, Saskatchewan's going to blitz this young quarterback and make him make mistakes. Yeah. But I think Michael O'Connor, he's been learning through these past couple months. And I mean, even if he's getting blitzed a lot and he's finding the hot route or he's finding JB on the flat just to check it down, like that's a successful play in my mind too, because when defense is blitzed, they're trying to make you make a bad play. They're not trying to make you make a short play, right? They're trying to make you make a mistake. But if Michael is if he shows this weekend that he's able to handle that and then take those calculated shots when need be. I mean, there's a couple defensive backs on Saskatchewan that tend to bite on shorter or double moves. I'm not naming any names, but
it's online. We heard Lucky Whitehead talking about him, but that's you can read between the lines.
Yeah,
you're right.
That's something I'm looking out for on Friday. I think Saskatchewan's going to be antsy to get after Michael O'Connor, but if he can prove to hang in there and then take those calculated shots, I think the offense is going to be just fine.
Once again, though, kudos to Nathan Rourke for putting himself out there, talking and explaining the exact process and being open about how serious he felt right away when he went down. And I don't know, I can't remember what your perspective was at the time, but game time, you and I are kind of all over the place, running up and down the sideline. You're filming stuff to post after the fact. I'm trying to film stuff to post in real time. And I think I was kind of just in front of the bench. And I knew it was a situation where I think it was a punting situation. So I was kind of repositioning myself to get to where the ball was going to go.
You're talking during the injury?
During the injury, I'm thinking, oh, okay, someone's down here. Who's down? And I look over, and then I realize who was down. I was like, oh, no, this can't be.
Oh, yeah.
And then we kind of have a group text message with all our marketing folks, and that just starts blowing up on the WhatsApp.
Didn't even
oh, my
look
God.
at my phone, yeah.
Because they're watching on TV, and they're seeing it because, props to CFL on TSN. They're capturing it all up close, and we're not necessarily seeing the reaction to him and to the trainers. And my role in the communications, I kind of have to stay close and update both the TV and Moj and Julio up in our radio booth. And right away, you just kind of feel the wind out of the sails a little bit, and he gets worked on, but you're expecting right away this isn't great. He's gonna miss some time. Is it gonna require surgery? You don't know. And you hit on the flight home, night and day compared to the flight home from Calgary. It was a little somber coming home considering the team had just won. So
for sure, yeah. Even the weekend was a little bit tough. I know there's a 24-hour rule that they like to apply, and I tried to apply it to myself too. Where I was very sad for Nathan and for everybody in this organization that it's obviously a hit when Nathan Rourke goes down. But I mean, like we've just talked about, like Michael O'Connor in my mind is a capable quarterback in this league. And I think it's a lot of deja vu here where people were saying Nathan has no experience. He's a Canadian. We're talking about around March, April time,
naysayers.
Right? Yeah, BC's going to be last. They have no quarterback. He's a young Canadian. And it's a lot of deja vu I'm experiencing this week. And I'm really looking forward to riding with O'Connor now here on.
Saw so many quote-unquote experts out there saying we would finish below 500. Well, all we have to do is beat Saskatchewan again Friday, and we clinch at least a 500 season. So, And sorry, this, pardon my language, it's BS. People say, the real season starts at Labor Day. It doesn't, folks. This is why you bank wins early in case you run into some adversity. This team is still very much in good shape, very much in the driver's seat to host a playoff game. Get to 9-1 before the bye here. Go to Montreal, a home and home with Calgary. You get a split in that Calgary home and home and a win in these next two. You're really in good shape. At that point, you'd be getting to 10-3. But I'm not going to assume this team's going to lose 2 or 3 games, not at all. But I'm just saying, you get to 9-1 here. That's a great positive first step. Win one of those Calgary games. Doesn't really matter what you do in Montreal, although should be a heavy favorite going into Montreal. So all the best to Nathan Rourke. Speedy recovery. Would love to see you again this season. We're not going to close the door on anything. He's not closing the door. If you listen to his comments yesterday at bclions.com, and it certainly provided us with some great fodder for this podcast and all the great stuff we do. But the good news is this is a hell of a football team, and I expect we'll be winning quite a few games here in the second half of the season. As mentioned, Saskatchewan in town, home and home series. Tough to beat a team twice in a row, but this Lions team has proved to match up well with those 2 wins in Saskatchewan. We're going to talk in a few minutes to Rod Pedersen, a host of the Rod Pedersen Show, Game Time Network. He's on YouTube, Facebook, rodpedersen.com. Rod, of course, used to be the voice of the Saskatchewan Roughriders on radio, and he still very much has his finger on the pulse of this Rider team, but maybe the Riders limping a little bit. They're going to be without, I think, Duke Williams and Jamal Morrow.
That's confirmed, yeah.
Cody Fajardo, who knows if he's 100%, but they're saying he's going to start. So this Saskatchewan team is ripe for the picking, I think, again, and I'm interested to see what Rod says about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, they got their 3 defensive linemen back on last week. Yeah, I thought they made a good impact, all 3 of them. Like, they were noticeable.
It was a battle up front.
Yeah. And that said, too, I think Peter Godber, especially up front, really handled the zone with the likes of Garrett Marino and all their other defensive linemen. They rotate up front, but you say that Duke Williams and Jamal Morrow, I'm interested to ask Rod about this. What's his take on the Riders offense coming up? But that with Williams and Morrow out, they might be getting back the likes of Shaq Evans and Kyron Moore to their receiving corps this week, which is a huge addition. I know Kyron Moore had a massive game here last year. I remember that. And he's one of the most explosive receivers.
Right after Labor Day,
And he's one of the most explosive CFL receivers in this league, but he just hasn't played in over almost a year now, so people maybe are a little bit sleeping on him this year, but it should be another good test. We already have the season series wrapped up with 2 wins over the Riders, but it's going to be a totally different game with Michael O'Connor under center, and I imagine their game plan is going to change, and it's going to be an interesting one in this West Division period that we're in right now.
Chance to pretty much bury these guys, and I know that's motivation enough. And Saskatchewan's getting some reinforcements. The Lions, perhaps. We'll see what happens. A couple pieces on defense maybe up in the air, but we'll see what the Wednesday injury report says as we record this on a Tuesday. One more full practice day, then the walkthrough, and back at home, expecting a good crowd too. So head to bclions.com. All kinds of ticketing options for you. Kids 17 and under are in for $10. Accompanying parents in for $25. Every ticket purchase, also special here, will grant you free admission to the PNE this week. So very much an incentive, and I know our ticket sales guys talking to them are expecting probably the second biggest crowd of the year after that unforgettable season kickoff against the Elks. First and Now continues. We'll head to Miami, Florida. Yeah, Rod, quite the globetrotter. He was at the World Junior Hockey Championships, and now he's back in his second home in Miami, Florida, perhaps getting ready to cover some NFL training camps. Rod Pedersen, talking Riders and more in a moment. And we now head down to, look at his setup. Way to rub it in. Rod Pedersen in Miami, Fort Lauderdale. Where are you, Roddy?
Specifically Boca Raton, Florida bakes takes, but you got the right idea, South Florida. And I wore my orange just for you guys tonight. You noticed that, I hope.
You're always on brand. And Boca Raton, is that where Jerry Seinfeld's parents lived in the sitcom?
Everybody says that. Let's put it this way. There's a lot of old people and a lot of rich people around here. I don't fit in, but it makes me feel young every day here in Boca Raton, Florida. Beautiful spot.
I was going to say, you're definitely not old, so don't sell yourself too short. Great to talk to you. You've been globetrotting like you always do. You just did a stint at the World Junior Hockey Championships. So good on you for getting out there and being at all the great events. We're going to talk about the Riders and a lot of the other great cool stuff you're doing, but let's kick it off with the football talk here. Obviously, Nathan Rourke, the story. Michael O'Connor is the man for the foreseeable future, but just your whole reaction to what Nathan was accomplishing this season, first and foremost, and the sad timing of his injury.
Obviously, it's incredibly unfortunate, and you've known me, Beggs, a long time. I'm going to tell you what I think. Whether people like it or not, I don't know. I thought the NFL talk with Nathan was a little premature, even though the numbers that he was putting up. But we had him on our show. We're in year 4 of the Rod Pedersen show. So we had him on when he was in Ohio. And just from his sheer maturity level, what you've gotten to know the last couple of years since he's been a BC Lion, I was incredibly impressed. And, we've had Neil McAvoy on our show, and Neil got very animated when he said, stop calling him the Canadian quarterback. You would never know what his passport is. It doesn't matter. And I'm like, okay. But we all thought going into the season was a gamble to have your top 2 quarterbacks, Nathan Rourke and Michael O'Connor. Has anybody ever done that, guy? Has anybody ever done that? I don't think so.
Right. Yeah.
Lo and behold, the Lions jump out to an 8-1 start. Nathan's setting records, breaking his own records he's set. And I would put this back on you guys now. I mean, he's the first guy in a long time that just sells tickets. I know people in Saskatchewan that went to the game last Friday specifically to watch Nathan Rourke. They weren't even the biggest Rider fans. They went to go see Nathan Rourke. Now that he's out for an extended time, and we'll talk about when he's going to come back, but has he had the numbers yet at 8-1 in the individual numbers to have earned an NFL tryout if the Lions were to let him out of his contract? I was just kind of wanting to see how the story ended. And I'm not sure we're going to be able to see that here in year one of him starting.
Yeah, that's football. It can be a tough game. It can be a cruel game. And yeah, I see it from a media side. I see it. Like, people are going to harp on the Canadian aspect of it because we've had, it's been several years, Rod, since we've had a Canadian have a regular starting role, right? I mean, with due respect to the Brandon Bridges and those that we've seen more recently, like Russ Jackson is probably the most recent comparable, right, as far as being a regular?
Absolutely. And the thing was, I saw Brandon up close, as did you, but I saw him for a little longer because he had 2 stints in Saskatchewan. And the thing was, Brandon got his opportunity to start. And unfortunately, he didn't capitalize when he was handed the brass ring. Nathan has. I had a front row seat for that, and Chris Jones was the head coach, and it was like any mistake Brandon made, he was going to be yanked, and that's exactly what happened. So, we called him Air Canada, Brandon Bridge, for lack of anybody else to have that nickname, but he's a cop now in the Toronto area, one of the best guys you're ever going to meet. But he just didn't take it that seriously, unfortunately. Nathan, from what I see, and this is what you would know far better than I, he seems to be incredibly serious about his craft. And I love the interview that he did with TSN 1050 Toronto, where he said he's not really thinking about the NFL. If I'm right, he wants to deliver for the BC Lions because they're the ones that gave him the chance. And there's something incredibly admirable in that in my mind.
Yeah, definitely wise beyond his years, as they say. And we know one thing, when he does return, it'll be appointment viewing for everyone who cares about the CFL. I know you keep close tabs on the Saskatchewan Roughriders. You talk a lot of football on your show, north and south of the border. Just your overall read on this Riders team, 5-5 at this point, probably a disappointment, seeing as Grey Cup host year, right? Whether they like it or not, that's always a little extra incentive to win. What's your read on the Riders so far, Rod?
Well, I was back there for a week at the start of August, just before the World Juniors, and at that time they were on a buy-in on a 3-game losing streak. And you can imagine this is one of the biggest seasons in Rough Riders history because of them hosting the Grey Cup. And Matt, you've been around the league a long time. I've been around the league a long time. We got a lot of friends in the CFL, and I had people saying to me, look at this roster. This is not a Grey Cup caliber contending roster. And I thought, well, Jeremy O'Day has gone on record and saying they're not going to jeopardize the future for the sake of one season, and they did put all their eggs in one basket with Cody Fajardo, whom I'm still a fan of both personally and professionally, and clearly the Rough Riders are too, giving him close to $500,000 a season and the highest paid Rough Rider ever. But between injuries, Cody wasn't great last week against you guys at the Riders' place. Everything at this point's gone wrong. They're starting tailback Jamal Morrow's hurt. Garrett Marino, their defensive end, given D tackle, who's played the end at times, given the longest suspension in CFL history. Like, it's been one dark cloud after another for the Rough Riders all season long. Now they're 5-5. They're playing must-win games, and that started about 2 or 3 weeks ago when they went into Edmonton and they won that one, and then lost to you guys. But they're playing must-win every week, and that's a lot of pressure starting in August. So let's put it this way. We know Cody's going to start this week at BC. Michael O'Connor will start for the Lions. If the Lions beat Saskatchewan with a backup quarterback and the Riders are starting their number one guy, I can't imagine how upset they'll be in the Rider Nation.
Panic button time, yeah.
And how real is this quarterback controversy chatter that's kind of becoming in Saskatchewan right now?
I think it's fairly real when Cody gets pulled near the end of the first half last week. And again, you guys saw with your own eyes, he wasn't that good. And I don't know. I'd like to talk to your defensive coaches on this. Mason Fine came in and had absolutely no problem moving the ball down the field in that first drive, ending in the Justin McInnis touchdown. It was textbook. Then they come up for the second half, and it was like the Lions defense figured out Mason Fine just like they had figured out Cody Fajardo. I feel like the quarterback change last week kind of put the Lions defense on their heels. They were ready for Cody. They weren't ready for Mason Fine, but it took a 15-minute halftime break to to figure him out, and clearly they did. So how serious, Nick, is the quarterback controversy? I don't know that it's that serious yet, because when the Riders came out for their first day of practice on Monday, Fajardo was running the first team, and he was named the starting quarterback by head coach Craig Dickinson. That may change after this week, but as I say, he's the highest paid Rough Rider quarterback of all time. I think they want to get their money's worth. You're going to put him on the field. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what his injury status is. Going back to week 2 or 3, I heard that Cody was playing with a variety of injuries, and I don't see how that's changed. And I'm just thinking, if he's that hurt, why is he playing? So just to examine what the Riders have done, you put a lot of money in that one basket. Whereas look at Montreal. They've got 2 quality quarterbacks in Trevor Harris and Vernon Adams, and they split the duties. So you would think in a season where you want to be in the Grey Cup or maybe your job's on the line, you might have an insurance policy, but they haven't really had that.
Mm-hmm. And then something I've been keeping an eye on this week is the status of Shaq Evans and Kyron Moore as well. And these are 2 receivers you know quite well. If they return to the lineup this week, how important is that for the Riders' offense?
I think it's really important. I mean, going into the season, I would have put the Rough Riders near the top for a receivers group. Clearly, it's the BC Lions, which I'll be honest, kind of came out of nowhere. They're on the verge of setting an all-time CFL record with 3 receivers with 1,300 yards each. But I would have put the Riders up there close based on what these guys have done. Shaq Evans has an NFL pedigree. Swerve Moore doesn't, but he's as good as anybody. But they've been hurt. And as I mentioned, the starting tailback, Jamal Morrow's not hurt. Duke Williams isn't going to play this week, and the Riders threw $250,000 a year at him in the offseason. He's not going to play this week. So injuries have had a big part in what the Riders' problems have been at 5-5. So, the big question is whether they get all those guys back. I don't think they're going to have – well, I know they're not going to have their full complement of receivers this week. So it's just another – log to throw on the fire of the Riders' problems right now.
Mm-hmm. And then obviously you mentioned too that Jamal Morrow is going to be out, but I mean, from what I've seen in Ben Hickson, he looks like a pretty solid option now at running back for them too, right?
Well, that's the thing. The Riders' head scout is Paul Jones, who for years and years and years was the Edmonton Eskimos' head scout, and was anybody in the CFL would gives Paul the credit for what Edmonton was able to do when he was the head scout. So there was never, when we talk about going into the season and people saying the Riders didn't have a Grey Cup contending caliber team, I was pretty content to say, you know what, this regime has shown the ability to find players, and Frankie Hickson is a tremendous example of that. There's some younger studs on that team, but what the fans were saying going into the year was this is not the time for a rebuild. I only go back to 2013 when I was calling the games, and I just remember the first day of training camp, I was looking, the guys were stretching, and I was looking over the field at the University of Saskatchewan. I'm like, my gosh, this is a Hall of Fame team. Ricky Foley, G. Roy Simon, John Chick, they went over the salary cap. Nobody cared. And this was not the way that Jeremy O'Day went into the season. There was a lot of young, unproven guys. Jamal Morrow was one who, for a period of time this year led the CFL in rushing. These just aren't big household names. Everybody was fine with that. But then when the injuries hit, it's kind of why people are so hot. There's a lot of not household names on that roster right now. Some are getting it done. Some aren't.
Obviously, go down memory lane here with the Riders for a couple moments, Roddy. 2013 had to have been the pinnacle, but talk about some of your career highlights behind the microphone there in the Riders booth. What else comes to mind?
I often think about BC Place when I think about that. Yeah. To be honest with you, what was your first year, Matt, with the team?
2016. But those playoff games you're going to talk about here was there as a fan, and it was definitely some fun times. I think you're talking like 2004 to 2007 in there, right?
Yeah, and I feel like that was just a different CFL. Just things were done differently back then. Wally had become entrenched in BC by then after, I think his first season in BC was 04. Was it
03, not? Yeah. 04 was the first.
It was 03?
04 was the first home playoff game for him here, yeah.
Okay, right. So, I tell people that there were 55,000 to 60,000 people in BC Place for regular season games. And to be honest, it doesn't seem like that long ago.
Right.
But I guess it really was. But, Spurgeon win, hitting G. Roy Simon on the last play of the game to win the game and lock down first place in the West. And we would still end up coming back there for the West Final a little later on. Carl Kidd, the longtime Lions fans would remember that name. Him and our GM, Roy Shivers, just had an absolute huge war in the media going after each other leading up to the end. There was a lot more sniping in the papers back then. Newspapers were a thing back then.
Oh, yeah.
And, it just seemed just so big, and the hatred was real. Now, the funny thing is, I never had a real personal rivalry myself with the BC Lions. Me accusing them of pumping in crowd noise and stuff, which they did, was more tongue-in-cheek. Calgary, I hated. It was personal. It was professional both ways. BC, I've always said they've got probably the best game night atmosphere and presentation in the entire CFL. I still think that. Those are just fun, good, honest games. Sometimes we won, sometimes you won. That's what builds rivalries, right?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head when you talk about different times. Like, even remember, I started covering games as a reporter just after that, 08, 09, and walk through the day before a game was an event, right? You'd have 6, 7, 8 reporters there. You'd have a full press conference with both head coaches. That felt awesome, didn't it? Like,
I didn't know anything different. That was the way the CFL was to me growing up. And I started covering it in 1991 as doing sidelines for Rider Radio. And then I got the play-by-play gig in 99. And it was always that way. Once you got around a semifinal, division final, and obviously Grey Cup Sunday, it was a huge flock of reporters that would travel. It was NHL, dare I say, NFL caliber. I'm not joking. The press boxes were full. The stadiums were full. And you just felt like you were really part of something. And now with the way it's broken down, I don't honestly blame the CFL for a lot of it. I blame the media companies for slashing their staff. There's just nobody to go cover it. Doesn't mean the games aren't every bit as important. It just doesn't quite seem to have the feel like it used to.
On that front, you've done quite well with the Rod Pedersen show, heard daily on, you can see it on Game Plus TV, YouTube, Facebook. You have your own website. Talked about the fact you're doing some more shows down in South Florida there. How big of a change and adjustment has it been for you, Roddy? And it's clear that you love it too.
Well, thanks, Matt. It was just over a year ago. I just decided that I needed and wanted a change, and kind of threw a dart and just kind of picked a place that I wanted to pick up stakes and try something new. And it's been great. Forged great relationships with the Dolphins and the Panthers. Go to all their games, at least in the wintertime, and then was doing the show out of Calgary for 17 weeks here in the spring and summer, and that was fun too. So what I found was, I guess, you say on that front, through a breakdown in traditional media, there seemed to be a void for what we're doing here. The American viewers, 20% of our viewers are American. Game Plus TV airs in 31 states. They really love the CFL coverage because, as you know, they love football down here, and they know who those players are. They know who Adam Bighill is. They know who Mike Riley is. You know what I mean? They know who Zach Collaros is. We are all through Ohio. It's the number one cable carrier in Ohio. It's Buckeye Cable that carries the Game Plus, which is the Rod Pedersen show. And then they love the hockey coverage too. So the NFL's covered, boys, just fine in America, as you know. But some of the other leagues that we talk about daily, people just really seem to have gravitated to. So, how could it not be fun? And to be treated as well as we are by these teams have been great. The Stampeders, the Flames, the Oilers and the Elks, the Blue Bombers, the Jets, in the Prairie region have all opened their doors. We want to get out to Vancouver. We've been invited by your bosses with the Lions to do it. And like I said, it airs on 927, channel 927 on Telus Optic Cable in BC. So we want to get out there and do that. So it's fun to build something. It's fun to grow. And starting over wasn't really something that was on my radar. But I did it anyways, and it's been a real fun ride.
Mm-hmm. And as someone who's watching the CFL quite regularly this year, what's your general takeaways on the entire league this season? I mean, we're about halfway through. Winnipeg stayed at the top throughout the season. The East has been up and down with everybody, but what are your general takeaways on the season so far?
I like that scoring's up, not by a lot, but up is up, and that's good, 12 to 14%. I think the last that I looked. I saw some fans debating on whether those 9 rule changes in the offseason are noticeable to the naked eye, and I don't really think they are, but it must have contributed to the scoring being up a little bit. What have I thought about the CFL season? Well, split the season into two halves. The BC Lions are the runaway most improved team. Nathan Rourke is the most outstanding player, and everybody's happy for what's gone on with the BC Lions because Rick Campbell's a great guy. Obviously, Neil McAvoy's a great guy, and Amar Doman just seems like the coolest dude to walk. So we're all happy with what's happened with the BC Lions, but I'm disappointed with the East. I was looking at the standings today, and the Argos are in first place at 4-5. And while I had never thought that the CFL should change its playoff format from the East-West, I think that we have to, because if we did go to a top six playoff format, the BC Lions would have a bye-in the opening week of the playoffs. They've earned it. They deserve it. But I don't think the CFL's – well, we had the nine rule changes, and that allows the CFL to say that, hey, we aren't risk-averse or change-averse. We'll look at things. How radical are they to change? So on the field, the product's been great. Off field, I think there's still work to do, but it's coming.
I was thinking about that too, with Saskatchewan sitting in fourth place in the West. They're kind of in a sweet spot right now, or no, in terms of crossing over.
Well, they don't think so. I don't think. I'm hearing it from their fans, of course, that, yeah, fourth is where we want to be. Let's focus on fourth. Let's lock down fourth. And I'm thinking if they got into that mentality, that's not the mentality you want. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, you don't want to be fourth, but if it comes to you this year, it may not be the worst prize.
Well, of course, yeah. But, dudes, I could sit and debate this all day and night because while the path through the East looks easier, I think there's a reason why nobody's ever done it.
Correct.
No Western team has ever gone through the East and advanced to the Grey Cup. And I know you always say that until the first team does it, but there has to be a reason. I don't know what that reason is, other than I don't think it's real easy to go on the road and win a football game in the CFL. It's hard enough to win at home. I think the stats show that historically over the last 20 years, it's about 50-50 in the division final. But, yeah, I mean, if the Riders are forced to go East and they finish fourth, and I don't know how they finish any higher than that anyways, then that's what lays before them. But I would say that's not something I would count on happening.
I'll tell you what, Lions represent the West, Roughriders represent the East. We'll take the home locker room. Riders can take the visitors' locker room. Everybody's happy, Rod.
Can you imagine? The thing is, it's funny you say that. The Riders have what I think the fourth best record in the CFL right now at 5-5. So they're, as long as they're in the playoffs, they have a chance. But gentlemen, I've been in BC for Grey Cups with the Lions and without the Lions, and there's a distinct difference when the home team is not in it. And I think in Saskatchewan, I mean, the media, the award-winning Rob Vanstone from the Leader Post, who's been covering the CFL for decades, has written off this season entirely. Like, whether they make the playoffs or not, he thinks there's no way they make the Grey Cup. I can't say that now because they haven't been mathematically eliminated, but I think it would suck to not have the Riders in the Grey Cup. For your sake, I hope the BC Lions will be there, but I think you would need a university math calculus professor to figure out all the combinations. There are still some good teams, at least four that, well, three for sure that deserve to be in the Grey Cup, but only two can be.
Yep. Hey, still have half a season to go here, so we shall see where all the chips fall. I'll tell you what, Regina for a Grey Cup is going to be a great party, no matter what teams are in it. That's going to be an outstanding week of Canadiana. Love the Grey Cup, best event on the calendar as far as I'm concerned. Love it every year, no matter where it is. Roddy, listen, we appreciate you making the time here. Congrats on your success, and we'll be watching. And, yeah, perhaps we'll hook up here on the West Coast for some shows before all's said and done.
Oh, I would love to get out there. Absolutely. And, again, you're welcome on my program anytime, Matt. Thanks. Nick, great to meet you. And go Lions. Very proud of the way it's come so far, so keep it going. And thanks for the time, boys.
Yeah,
you heard as well. Thanks, Rod.
You heard the man. Go Lions. First and now, the official BC Lions podcast. Excellent stuff with Rod Pedersen, host of the Rod Pedersen Show. You heard the man. TELUS Optic TV. You can catch him every day from 9 to 11. Great take on the Roughriders overall.
Yeah, I have a ton of respect for Rod, and his CFL opinions are ones I always like tuning into, and like I said, I don't want to say I grew up listening to Rod, but throughout pretty much my teenage years, he was a main fixture in the CFL media that I consumed, and yeah, a lot of fun talking about the Saskatchewan Roughriders. There's always a lot going on there, and living his best life now down in Florida.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to go down and see him one of these days. Maybe host a podcast from down there. Thanks again to Rod Pedersen for joining us on First and Now this week. Lions Roughriders 7:30. Mentioned some of the great ticketing options off the top. How about this? 50-50 jackpot. Guaranteed jackpot of $100,000. You can buy your tickets online, bclions.com, or better yet, buy a ticket to the game. Get your ticket at the stadium. Guaranteed jackpot of $100,000. Winner, of course, will take half. Lions Roughriders, the third game of this Week 12 in the CFL. The action starts Thursday night. Winnipeg hosting Calgary. All signs point toward Jake Maier starting for the Stampeders ahead of Bo Levi Mitchell. There's your storyline of the week for that game.
Oh, yeah.
But Winnipeg with a chance to get back in the win column after that crazy one against Montreal 2 weeks ago. They're coming off an actual bye week, are those Bombers.
Yeah, who would have thought they had a bye week? But yeah, I mean, Calgary, it looked like they kind of had to make that move last week. I'm at halftime at that game when they did go to Maier for the second half in relief of Bo Levi Mitchell. But I'm a little surprised that they're going to be presumably sticking with Maier for this game at Winnipeg. I mean, one thing too, last year we saw Jake Maier go into Winnipeg in his second career CFL starts, and he threw for 300 yards, and they lost on a last-second missed field goal to the Bombers. So, I mean,
Right.
Mayor's shown before he can go into a
was a crazy
hostile
one.
environment, and lead his team to the promised land. So I've always been pretty high on him, and if it is Maier, it's not confirmed yet, but if it is him, my eyeballs are really going to be peeled to what he can do against that Winnipeg team. And it's interesting, too, because Winnipeg's a game above BC right now at 9-1 compared to 8-1, so it would, in a way, it would help us out if Winnipeg was to lose, but then if that happens, Calgary also gains ground too. So I don't really know what we're wishing for.
I say go Blue Bombers. I mean, we're going to keep pace with Winnipeg. I say you get to 9-1 this week from a Lions perspective. It almost doesn't matter what Winnipeg does this week. Maybe important to keep Calgary and Saskatchewan further down there. Let those two teams battle for third, but that's just one man's humble opinion. Thursday night at IG Field. First part of the Friday doubleheader. Another Toronto-Hamilton matchup. Great. Really going on a limb there. They're going to meet several times here still. They got the Labor Day matchup coming up. They just played each other twice in a row. What is Toronto? I don't know. We've been wondering about Hamilton all season long. I know you think they're still the top team in the East Division, but until they do something consistently, I won't believe that. But it's anyone's guess what happens in this game.
Oh, yeah, you're telling me. I mean, Toronto, AJ Ouellette, who filled in for Andrew Harris, looked really strong in that game. And I think he's a good running back, too. But the Argos lost that game to Calgary. But
Pick six.
Yeah, like Calgary did not beat Toronto. Toronto kind of beat themselves in that one. All they had to do, they're up 19-10, and I was watching that game live, and I'm thinking, perfect, we're going to get some help. The Toronto's 2-score lead in the second half. But, yeah, that pick six just totally changed the entire landscape of that game. And I think it does boil down a bit to McLeod Buffalo-Thompson just not being able to kind of seal the deal in that moment. Unfortunately, I know the quarterbacking in the East has been so up and down, but yeah, I mean, Toronto just couldn't find a way to get it done at the end there. And then Hamilton too, I thought they really missed. They had both their cornerbacks out in Jamal Roll and Deontay Evans. I think they really felt those absences. I'm not sure if they'll be back for this one, but that's kind of what I attribute Hamilton's loss to, at least at Montreal that last week. They were back and forth at the end there too.
Yeah, we'll be trying to pay attention to that one as we're getting ready to host Saskatchewan. Saturday, wrapping up the 12th week, another Battle of the Titans. The Elks looking to sweep Ottawa and get that elusive first home victory since October 12th of 2019. I'm saying it, Nick. I got no trust in the Ottawa Red Blacks. None. Zip. Zilch. Nothing. Edmonton's winning again. You heard it here.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this too, but I think I'd roll with Edmonton in this one too. Nick Arbuckle is starting for Ottawa against his old team, so a little revenge for him. And then if you're on the Edmonton side, a little revenge for last year because Ottawa actually swept them last year. You remember,
right.
Obviously those two games in 2021 that
One of them was early on, right?
It was week one. Week one. The crazy. I think the Elks had like 450 yards, and they still ended up losing that game. But yeah, Edmonton just what I took away from that game was it was Ottawa was a better team in the first half. Caleb Evans is moving the ball. It was kind of look like, okay, Ottawa's gonna kind of get back on track here, get back in the East Division here, and then the second half started, and Edmonton just totally changed the game with their physicality. I thought Ante Milanovic-Litre was just a force running the ball, and Edmonton had these long drives kind of back to back. They were in second and inches a bunch, so Kai Loxley ended up having like 7 carries for 8 yards, kind of a funny CFL stat line, but Edmonton just kept moving the chains. I thought physically they were more strong, and it ended up they punched in a couple touchdowns in the second half and ran away with that one, and I don't see it being that much different this time around.
I tell you what, get this win against Saskatchewan, maybe do the Elks a bit of a favor. Edmonton wins, and all of a sudden they're 2 points out of a crossover spot.
Well, it goes back to what
I love this league.
It goes back to what Rod was saying too about the divisions. I mean, Edmonton is 6th place in the league right now, but they're unfortunately not really near a playoff spot right now, and there's still a lot of season to be played, but yeah, it really brings up an interesting conversation about the CFL playoff landscape right now.
Don't want to start any controversies here, but I'm for getting rid of them.
At this point, it's at this point when a team like us doesn't have that bye week schedule, but a team that's under 500 like Toronto does, I mean, it has to be a conversation at least, right?
And I know there's some traditionalists out there. Oh, it's got to be East-West Grey Cup. It's got to be East-West Grey Cup. Not in this format. It doesn't. Mm-hmm. Like, not when you said you're going to have a team below 500, probably in the East, getting a bye and then hosting a division final. Yeah, that's not right. I mean, we've seen New York play New England in the Super Bowl. We've seen an all-California World Series. It's really, I get it. Canada's smaller and it's a 9-team league, but there you go.
Well,
if we're not allowed to talk about these league issues on a team podcast, I apologize, but there you go. These are all things I've said before. So.
I think if you're a CFL fan, though, if your favorite team gets eliminated, you're not rooting for, say, your favorite team's in the West. You're not rooting for a West team because they're in the West, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm all the storyline that you brought up to Rod about the BC Saskatchewan Grey Cup where they cross over and we get their locker room. That's an intriguing one.
It's one game at a time.
Yes.
I'm not by any means making any predictions. I was just kind of saying, wouldn't that be wild? Saskatchewan is the East Division champ in any circumstance, even if it's not against us.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we're planning to win every game we can and put the team put itself in a good position to be there on November 20th. But just saying, it's wild to think about. Great times. We are broadcasting inside the Go-Goat Sports Studios at the Wall Center on Burrard. We're on Twitter at First and Now. I'm at BakesTakes84. He is at Nick_Kowalski. Nick with a K, no C, _Kowalski.
You betcha.
And we will, think we're going to take next week off. Bye week for the team. Both of us kind of our schedules clashing with the days off we're taking. So we will talk in 2 weeks' time ahead of a trip to Montreal. Boy, oh boy, that's always a great time. Love going to Montreal. Great times. Molson Stadium, great backdrop. And hopefully we're talking about a Lions team that's looking to improve to 10-1. 8-1 Lions, 5-5 Riders. Friday. Catch you later.